What's good, peeps? Thanks always for passing by the channel. Much appreciated. Hit that subscribe button if you guys are new. Also, please smash that like button. It will help me a lot with the YouTube algorithm. And you can support the channel as well. I've got a Patreon account. Link is in the description. All right. So yesterday or 2 days ago, because I'm filming very late, so it's probably going to go up tomorrow. I did a video talking about the fighter of the decade. It wasn't the finished video. I am going to do a much longer one discussing the three guys I mentioned, plus a few more in about 3 or 4 weeks' time. It's funny, though, because everyone's opinion is so different. Everyone is so split on this. Reading some of the comments yesterday, and loads of comments came in. Thank you to everyone that commented on the video. It was literally a complete split between Canelo, Floyd, and Manny. And it wasn't just a split. People were so adamant about either one. It wasn't like, yeah, Canelo, but it was like, no, Canelo. Nope, Floyd. Nope, Manny. And a lot of people even said Andre Ward as well. So I'm going to need to bring Andre Ward into the discussion. But it's a very, very good discussion. I need to do a British fighter of the decade as well. So I might film that on the same day, probably a separate video. Off the top of my head, Carl Froch. I think Carl Froch, with a gap, if I'm honest with you. Tyson Fury, right? Especially if Tyson Fury beat Deontay Wilder. Then you can make an argument for Tyson Fury. I think you've got to probably mention AJ in there. Who else? Frampton, maybe. I don't know. It's difficult off the top of the head. But there's probably 5 or 6 that might be in the discussion. But I do think Carl Froch's resume is solid. People are going to pick holes in it. But they're the same people that might not pick holes in Canelo's resume in terms of when he fought that person, did he win that fight, blah, blah, blah. Carl Froch's resume is solid. 1 second, sorry. Late night brew, because it's cold as fuck. I always say this, ginger tea, green tea. You got to try it. Try it, people. Don't knock it until you try it. Anyway, about the subject in hand, if you asked me mid-decade, so 2014-15, if you came up to me and said, Ade, who do you think will be fighter of the decade? Bear in mind, at that time, Floyd was already talking about retiring. I think he had 2 fights left on his Showtime contract. Manny Pacquiao had been knocked out by Marquez, had been beaten by Floyd as well. And Andre Ward, we didn't know what was going on. I don't think this was the time when Andre Ward had stopped boxing, but I thought Andre Ward's ceiling was quite low in the sense that I thought he could dominate 168, but I didn't think he could go to 175. And even if he could go to 175, he's going to tap out there, right? So if you asked me, with all those things kind of in the pot, who was going to be fighter of the decade, I would have 100% said Gennady Golovkin. I was about to say someone else there. I would have 100% said Gennady Golovkin. Gennady Golovkin around 2013-14 was murdering people. And I know people are going to say, Ade, it was B-level people. Don't care. Don't give a fuck. He was starching people. Literally people. You know when people say, oh, he put someone to sleep. He was putting people to sleep. And I thought, it wasn't just the fact that I thought GGG could dominate 160. That was a given for me. I thought that was a given. I thought, and probably it's crazy now in hindsight, right? But I thought at the time that GGG wouldn't only dominate 160, he would go up to 168 and fuck those people up. And then I thought would go to 175 and kill them as well. That's how convinced I was of what I was watching. I thought I was watching a murderer commit crimes in the ring. That's how good I thought GGG was. So now fast forward sort of 6-7 years to the position where, look, GGG's done some good things, but in terms of where I thought he was going to go to where he did go, can't lie to you, I'm thoroughly disappointed. And even if he did beat Canelo in both of those fights, still would have been disappointing because I expected him to sleep him. I was going to say a horrible word there. I expected him to sleep Canelo. I expected him to sleep Jacobs. And then I expected him to literally throw those belts away and go up to 168 and start sleeping people. And it hasn't happened. And it's not just me. I think his fellow boxers almost expected that of him as well. I really do. I remember that interview. I think it was like a sit down. It might have been for Facebook, but it was Carl Froch, Adam Smith, and George Groves. I don't know if it was before their first fight or their second fight. I can't remember. But Adam Smith asked both of them about the possibility of fighting Gennady Golovkin. Remember, these guys are 168 and they're talking about a 160 guy. Carl Froch at the time, and this was no tongue-in-cheek, this wasn't the Carl Froch we know now. Carl Froch said, swerve him. Completely going to swerve him. This guy can box and he punches like a mule. Why fight that? Carl Froch. Danny Jacobs, I remember this. I remember all these things, by the way. Danny Jacobs, when asked about fighting GGG, didn't want to know. Didn't want to know. Only wanted to know after the Kell Brook fight. Didn't want to know. Canelo decided to put a belt in the bin. Canelo gave up his WBC title rather than defend it against Gennady Golovkin. Miguel Cotto, huge fan of Miguel Cotto. Miguel Cotto in the ring. Max Kellerman, mic underneath his mouth, said, will you fight GGG? Cotto was like, Everyone didn't want to know, people. Everyone didn't want to know. There was even talk about Mayweather possibly fighting him at 154 pounds. GGG said, yep, I'll go down to 154. Didn't want to know. No one wanted to know. So it wasn't just me getting excited. I was getting excited based on what these other fighters' reactions were when asked about fighting GGG. We all heard about him knocking down Kovalev in sparring. That's not this Kovalev now. I'm not talking about Yard Kovalev or Canelo Kovalev. I'm talking about Crusher Kovalev. So that's why I was already thinking this guy can go and do damage at 175. And then it just didn't happen. Did not happen. And you know when I knew it wasn't going to happen? People might call me mad. I remember watching him versus Kell Brook. I'm not trying to say Kell Brook solved the puzzle. I'm not saying it at all. And that was the first time I think I saw him in there with someone that moves a bit. Kell Brook obviously in and out. You know, Kell Brook's a good boxer, or was a good boxer. And Kell Brook caused them a couple of problems, but Kell Brook ultimately was just too small and started to get kind of walked down. But I remember thinking, hello. Then all of a sudden, everyone wanted to fight him. It's like everyone saw, oh my God, the boogeyman isn't as scary as we thought. What the problem that GGD had, sorry, 1 second, is for as good as a boxer as GGG was, and by the way, we're talking about a fantastic boxer. You don't have the amateur record GGG has without being a good boxer. And he beat fucking David Lemieux with just a jab. Fantastic performance. For as good as he was, he obviously relied on that power, right? And once you don't start laying guys over and they can walk through your power, you have a problem. You have a problem. And you have a problem because I always feel like guys with power, supreme power like GGG had, don't necessarily work on their other crafts, if that makes any sense. It's almost like, regardless, I've got that and that's going to get me out of jail all the time. And once that goes, once people can start taking those, you almost like, we have a problem. And once GGG stepped up to the Premier League, if you like, and people started to be able to take his punches, you kind of noticed that there was an issue there. Jacobs took his punches, issue. Canelo took his punches, issue. Derevchenko took his punches, issue. And now, unfortunately, at 37, he can't learn the things that he needs to learn. If GGG worked on movement and footwork at 31, 32, it could have been formidable. It still was, but could have been formidable. Could have been in a discussion for Fight of the Decade. But unfortunately, like most punchers, not just him, Nigel Benn had the same problem. Like most punchers, once people can take your punch, it must feel weird, right? In your head, you must think, fuck, he's taken that punch. What do I do now? And yeah, that's the end of the video, really. Not much to say on this one. Apart from, I honestly did, I'm not joking. This is no hyperbole. I honestly did expect Gennady Golovkin to be Fight of the Decade. Just because the way people feared him. People talk about boogeymen, right? You hear it a lot. There's, in the last sort of 15 years, to me, there's only been two real boogeymen of boxing where people are genuinely scared. Gennady Golovkin was number one. And Manny Pacquiao for about 3 years was number two. Manny Pacquiao in that run, that Cotto, Hatton, Margarito run, people were genuinely afraid. And it's a shame what happened to Golovkin. I say that. It's not like he's still not fighting, but it's a shame that he didn't live up to his full potential. Because I think full potential Golovkin, I mean, people, I think you're forgetting. There were times, a year and a half, 2 years ago, when people were talking about Golovkin as one of the best middleweights ever. Literally, they were talking about Hopkins, Hagler, Monzon, Golovkin. They don't do that anymore. Shame. Peace.